Mossadegh had tried to audit the company's books to verify that Iran was receiving its contracted share. The AIOC refused. They stonewalled, dismissed Iranian requests, and operated as if the country's resources were theirs by right. So Mossadegh, backed by a wave of nationalist sentiment, took the only option left. He seized the oil fields. Britain lost the cash flow overnight. The Abadan refinery, one of the largest in the world, shut down. Iranian oil stopped flowing to global markets. And the British government, furious and desperate, began planning revenge. But there was a problem. Britain couldn't topple Mossadegh alone. The international community wasn't on their side. President Truman in the United States had been reluctant to help, viewing Mossadegh as a legitimate leader fighting for sovereignty. Truman pushed Britain to negotiate. The British tried, but they never intended to actually accept nationalization. Internal documents later revealed they were stalling, waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came in 1953 when Dwight Eisenhower entered the White House. The British strategy was simple. Convince the Americans that Mossadegh wasn't a nationalist. Convince them he was a communist. Starting in November 1952, British intelligence repeatedly approached US officials with the same warning. Iran is falling to the Soviets. Mossadegh is weak. The Tud Party, Iran's communist faction, is growing stronger. If we don't act, Iran will be the next domino. It was exaggeration at best, fabrication at worst. CIA analysts on the ground didn't believe the Tud Party was anywhere close to seizing power. A 1952 report concluded that a communist coup was not imminent. A 1953 analysis reached the same conclusion. But the Eisenhower administration ignored its own intelligence. The Cold War lens distorted everything. Eisenhower feared instability more than he valued sovereignty. In April 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles approved $1 million to bring down Mossadegh's government. The operation had a code name. The CIA called it TPAX. British intelligence called it Operation Boot. The plan was drafted over 3 months, with officers meeting in Cyprus and Beirut to finalize the details. The strategy relied on a constitutional loophole. Under Iranian law, the Shah had the power to dismiss the Prime Minister. If they could get the Shah to issue a royal decree firing Mossadegh and appointing General Fazlollah Zahedi in his place, the coup could be framed as a legal act. Then they would back it with violence. CIA money flowed into Tehran. Operatives bribed newspaper editors to print anti-Mossadegh propaganda. They bought off military officers. They hired street thugs from athletic clubs and the slums of South Tehran to stage demonstrations. They created fake communist groups to threaten religious leaders and make it look like the Tud Party was out of control. The goal was chaos. Stir up enough fear and unrest that the public would turn against Mossadegh and rally behind the Shah. It was covert warfare disguised as spontaneous uprising. But there was one major obstacle. The Shah himself. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi was young, insecure, and terrified of failure. He didn't trust his own power. He didn't want to sign the dismissal decree because he feared it would backfire. Roosevelt met with him multiple times, trying to convince him that this was the moment to act. He told the Shah that if he didn't move now, Iran would either become a communist state or turn into another Korea. The Shah hesitated. He stalled. He questioned whether the plan would work. The operation hit its first serious delay because the man they needed to legitimize the coup didn't have the courage to follow through. Roosevelt kept pushing. Finally, on August 13, 1953, the Shah agreed. He signed 2 decrees. One dismissed Mossadegh. The other appointed Zahedi as the new prime minister. Roosevelt's team moved quickly. The decrees were prepared. The next step was to deliver them to Mossadegh and force him out of office. But Mossadegh had been warned. He knew something was coming. When the Shah's messenger arrived on the night of August 15, Mossadegh refused to step down. He argued that the constitution didn't allow the Shah to unilaterally dismiss an elected prime minister. He declared that he had just stopped a coup attempt. His supporters overwhelmed the CIA-hired thugs who were supposed to back up the decree. Key conspirators were arrested. Zahedi, the man chosen to replace Mossadegh, went into hiding and was moved between safe houses by CIA operatives. And the Shah, convinced that the coup had failed and fearing for his life, fled the country. First to Baghdad. Then to Rome. The plan had collapsed in less than 48 hours. On August 18, CIA headquarters sent the cable to Tehran. Abort the operation. Discontinue all activities against Mossadegh. Get out of Iran. The message was clear. Washington believed the coup was over. They didn't want to be connected to a failed operation. Roosevelt read the order and made a decision that violated every protocol. He ignored it. According to witnesses, he told his team they weren't finished. He believed the operation could still be saved. And he had the money, the agents, and the contacts to try again. What happened next was improvisation. Roosevelt had no new plan from headquarters. He was operating on instinct and desperation. He ordered his Iranian agents to spread a false story. They told the public that Mossadegh had tried to seize the throne from the Shah. They bribed journalists to print articles claiming the Prime Minister was a traitor. They circulated the royal decrees that Mossadegh had rejected, framing them as legitimate orders that he had defied. Roosevelt also escalated the propaganda war. CIA operatives posing as members of the Tud Party started threatening clerics and religious leaders, warning them of savage punishment if they didn't comply. The goal was to make it look like the communists were taking over, which would turn religious and conservative factions against Mossadegh. At the same time, Roosevelt poured more money into bribing military officers. Some were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. Others were threatened with death if they didn't cooperate. CIA agents who initially refused to participate in a second coup attempt were coerced through bribery and intimidation. Even Ayatollah Kashani, a former ally of Mossadegh and Speaker of the Assembly, may have been bought off with CIA funds. The pieces were moving into place. But Roosevelt still needed the streets. August 19, 1953. Early in the morning, crowds began to gather in Tehran. They weren't spontaneous. They were organized, funded, and directed by CIA operatives and their Iranian agents. Some were genuine supporters of the Shah. Many were paid thugs who didn't care about politics. A few were agents provocateurs pretending to be different factions. One Iranian journalist working for the CIA led a mob toward Parliament, inciting them to set fire to the offices of a newspaper owned by Mossadegh's foreign minister. Another CIA agent led a group to attack the offices of pro-Tud papers. The violence spread quickly. Within an hour, crowds were marching through the streets, chanting pro-Shah slogans and calling for Mossadegh's removal. Then the military began to move. Officers who had been bribed or threatened started entering the streets with their units. Police and military forces that had been loyal to Mossadegh began switching sides. Some did it for money. Others did it because they believed the tide had turned. The Central Telegraph Office fell. Telegrams were sent to the provinces urging a pro-Shah uprising. Police headquarters was overrun after a brief shootout. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs fell next. By midday, the momentum had shifted completely. Mossadegh, realizing he was losing control, had made a critical mistake. In response to the unrest, he had prohibited all demonstrations. That meant his own supporters and the Tud Party members stayed off the streets. The vacuum allowed pro-Shah and anti-Mossadegh forces to dominate. Tanks rolled toward Mossadegh's residence. After hours of fighting, with gunfire echoing through the city and bodies piling up in the streets, the residence was overrun. Mossadegh escaped in his pajamas, fleeing through a back exit. He went into hiding. The next day, he surrendered. By the time the violence ended, nearly 300 people were dead. The coup that Washington had ordered to stop had succeeded. The Shah returned to Tehran on August 22, 1953. He was accompanied by CIA Director Allen Dulles. According to Kermit Roosevelt's account, the Shah told him directly that he owed his throne to God, his people, his army, and to Roosevelt. By "you," the Shah meant Roosevelt and the two countries he represented, Britain and the United States. Mossadegh was arrested and put on trial. He was convicted of treason by the Shah's military court. On December 21, 1953, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by house arrest for the rest of his life.